And I've placed it flat on the table, the camera, so it's just like a blank screen. And this is basically what I'm kind of heading towards, is something a bit like a lecture. It's just really been playing on my mind. It's difficult to describe. The mind works in lots of different ways, and I think though everyone's mind might look the same, I think it's a very individual thing, the mind. Yes, it's been really playing on my mind, and I thought, no, what I'll do is I'll do a YouTube channel of lectures, and talk about the things that has, as I said, been playing on my mind. In terms of the world, I sort of thought about the whole of the world, and divided it into different areas. I thought, for example, America's main problem is economic, and it's really to do with the American stock market and the American banks. So if they can focus on the American stock market and the American banks, and get that sorted out, they'd be a lot better off. Sort of moving to places like Cuba. Cuba's actually doing very well and being more accepted by the world. I saw this nice thing on Current Affairs that they were accepting Cuban baseball. You know, it was really nice. I thought, oh, how lovely. You know, they're getting on a lot better, the Americans, and the Cubans. I mean, north of the rest of the islands, the Pacific Islands, and then you move into South America. Well, South America, I mean, what is it? Ecuador's legalizing cannabis. Well, I mean, it goes back to the Incas, the fact that in America they can grow so many drugs. I think that's the first time in history that they started refining them and using them. Well, I don't know. No, don't quote me on that. But as I said, the problem goes back. Well, I suppose Kenny would say it isn't a problem. You know, why is drugs a problem? Well, I would have thought for most people, it's probably not a good idea, not wise to have anything at all to do with drugs. There's lots of ways of having a lot of pleasure and happiness in your life, and drugs, I would argue with Kenny, go against that. I think the danger of drugs usually occurs in the teenage years. I know it did with Kenny, and it did with Bill. Well, as I said, back in Kenny, really it was the 70s, but it was the 60s. As I said, with me, it's never really been a strong part of my life. I never had an attraction to it. I suppose how I would say is just drugs are not my cup of tea. I mean, Exmouth, when I lived in Exmouth, you know, I was living in a pretty dodgy bedsit. You know, First and Last was down the road. That was a real dodgy pub. You know, Exmouth got a bit of a reputation around here as being where all the reprobates and criminals are, and it's the only place around here that really has a high crime rate. And they stuck Kenny in, what was his estate called? I forgot what that estate was called. Well, quite a crime-ridden estate on the worst road on it. And Kenny got himself into a lot of trouble. And recently he's come to Honiton, because he basically ran away from all the trouble he got himself into. And he's living at the care home by the police station. Kenny actually has a degree in chemistry. And he's pretty clever, actually. He can remember quite a lot of it. But sort of waylaid after that, so to speak, and has been ever since. He's in his 50s now, so I don't think there's any changing him. I don't know how long this. I'm just trying to judge 15 minutes all the time you're allowed on YouTube. I mean, the books. I suppose it's sort of, I saw this film, What Lays Beneath, with Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. Was it Michelle Pfeiffer, the actress? And there was like a ghost, and he turned out to be a psychopath and this kind of thing. I just like the term "what lays beneath." I think my books are a lot about that. What lays beneath. I think the thing to remember is, I mean, I could take you on a tour of the building. I might in a minute. I could show you in the window, for example, that there are two eyes looking back at me. I might be able to show it to you. And I know the occult devil's at work, and those are the eyes that signal to me that there are werewolves about. Now, in the undergrowth the other day, there was a lot of noise. About 3 days ago, a lot of growling outside. And on this side of the hills, because Hamilton is like Rome, it's all surrounded by hills, right? And they're beautiful hills. So you can see them from everywhere we're at Honiton, lovely, beautiful hills. And quite a lot of them are forested. There's a load of forest back there, and there was howling back there. And this one was in the undergrowth. And he was bagging about for quite a long time. And they were calling him back there. A werewolf is half a dog, half a spirit, right? A spirit, not a ghost, yeah? And they're to do with despair. The werewolf's about, right? It's times of despair. It's a bad sign when there are werewolves about. And if there are werewolves about, you don't go out after twilight, right? It's really not a good idea to do so. I suppose I was saying to Bill about all sorts of mysticism, right? You've got like one camp that believes that there's no mysticism at all, right? It just doesn't exist. There's no type of mysticism, no magic, none of that stuff. It's all kind of scientific and normal and that kind of thing, you know? And as soon as you talk about mysticism, they're up in arms. No, it doesn't exist. Well, quite honestly, there are so many documents, the evidence is overwhelming. It's a bit... And then you've got this camp, there's so much into it, they go hunting for it. Well, quite honestly, I would have thought, I was saying to Belle, when you think about things like unicorns or mermaids or the times of King Arthur and all these kind of things, when there seemed to be some sort of magic that was kind of magical and good, basically. Well, I mean, for the past long time, say 300 years, maybe there hasn't been much evidence of any of those things, really. You know, it's been more the dark side, hasn't it? The black side of magic, there's been evidence of that. But not really the light side at all, really. Very few sort of, I don't know, who's seen fairies in 300 years? I mean, I'm just sort of, you know, saying. So if it's the dark side of magic, you know, well, they're definitely looking for trouble. So I don't know why, if people have problems in their lives, so they go looking for more. I'm sure most people have enough problems. I think they're satisfied they've got enough. As for sort of mysticism being a part of life, well, as I said, there are many documents which present overwhelming evidence if you look at them all. I wouldn't go looking for it. Some people, sometimes, and I think to some extent, most people, mysticism will enter their life at some point, and at that point you deal with it. But after that, you know, the world we live in, which is the other camp that says, oh, we live in a very normal, scientifically dominated world, dominated by politicians and scientists and things like that. But quite honestly, you need to find your way in that world, which is this world, and find a balance and what you need there. And this is, you know, basically both camps should stop arguing and just balance out the argument, you know. There's a bit of both, you know. There's a bit of both. And certainly, as I said, not being evidence of anything good to do with magic. Really, definitely going back 300 years. If it's not the good side, then, as I said, if it enters your life, you've got to deal with it. And if it doesn't, I don't recommend going hunting for it. Anyhow, as I said, we'll end this lecture and I'll have a good think and I'll do another one.